Hi, everyone. Welcome to our feedback session for the International Space Station project conducted as Mission 2 by the Intelsat sponsored students. So yes, welcome everybody. Welcome to our feedback session for Mission 2. And our presentation today is going to be presented by two of the representatives from the students who participated in this mission. That is Cyan Pallad as well as Liam Brady. The way that the students decided to perform the experiments and the way they decided to put together their presentation was that they formed two groups, and one of the groups was led by Liam and the other group was led by Cyan. So that is why we have them both presenting the feedback today. So let me give you a little bit of background. Who is MaxIQ? What are we doing in terms of this project? Because a lot of you have not actually been exposed to what we do in the past. So MaxIQ is a company that is just a little bit older than a year today, and it is a business that we've registered in the USA specifically to serve a global market. What it is that MaxIQ Space delivers programs. Part of them, a number of them, involve X-in-a-box modular electronics components, and we also have some other hardware that we're bringing to the fore through MaxIQ. And so a little bit of background to Mission 1. Mission 1 was sponsored by Intelsat this time last year, beginning of last year. And Intelsat, thank you very much, is sponsoring another program, another Mission 1 this year. And we're actually interviewing the students to participate this week. So Mission 1 is all about understanding our Earth in the context of our solar system. And here what happens is that students will get X-in-a-box modular electronics that they will receive. They'll receive a kit at home. They construct their experiments, their instruments, and conduct a number of experiments at home. They also form groups to tackle a number of different challenges, especially relating to sustainability and the Sustainable Development Goals. Mission 2 comprises a number of students who elected to continue on the Intelsat program. And so what we had is we had 9 students, 9 of the 16 students who were on last year's Mission 1, 9 of them joined Mission 2. And that was to broaden understanding in orbit and also on the International Space Station. So what it was is that the students, those 9 students who participated, they received an add-on kit. So you can see here, we've got this really large component, which is the particle matter sensor, the SG35. So what it was is that they received a number of additional sensors that they could add to the kit that they already had. That's the great thing about modular electronics, is you can keep adding. You don't have to start all over again, breadboarding, making PCB soldering, etc. They simply added the components, changed the code, so that what they would have is that they would have an identical kit to the one going to the International Space Station. So the one I'm holding in my hand is the actual kit that was on the International Space Station and came back to us. The students are going to take you into a lot more detail of what was in this kit and its path, its journey to orbit and back. And Mission 3, we do have a Mission 3, and we're going to be running that for the first time this year. Mission 3 is all about launching our own payloads. And thanks to Blue Shift Aerospace in Maine in the USA, we are going to be having a rideshare program with them. And we're expecting that for late third quarter this year. So around about August, September, maybe early September, we're going to be going to space. And so the students are going to be taking some of these components once again, redeploying them into payloads that are going to be integrated into the Blue Shift payload bay. And we have, right now, we have 35 student groups who are going to be participating in that challenge globally. So it's open to student groups across the world. And so what I'd like to do now is I'd like to actually play a short video. This is the video, which is a summary of the experience that the students had on Mission 1. And so I'd like to quickly play this video for you.
In Africa, industries related to science, technology, engineering, and math have grown across the continent. But 87% of African business leaders are still concerned about the availability of key skills in the workforce.
They've been outsourcing a lot of the skills in order to keep up and to continue to compete.
So how do you inspire a new generation to pursue STEM-related careers? You give them access.
So our partnership with X in a Box, it's aimed at reaching youngsters. We want to open up a world of possibility and provide some tangible access to space STEM specifically. We've been operating in this region for more than 30 years, and what we're really good at is space engineering. We are able to give back in this area.
Intelsat partnered with X in a Box, a modular learning platform that utilizes X chips, ranging from CPUs to sensors, that students can assemble with no prior electronics or coding experience.
They could put together a scientific instrument and run experiments, and also at the same time actually use those same components to build a satellite and launch it into orbit.
From concept to launch, students design and build every part of their project, revealing more about their world and themselves.
At the end of the program, it's just so amazing to see, because they realize, I can do this.
I've always wanted to pursue a career involving space and STEM. This program has helped this become a reality in my eyes.
This gave me a newfound appreciation for the environment.
Just being part of such a big project like launching a satellite into space is just a phenomenal opportunity.
After this program, I would want to continue in my journey towards becoming an engineer that creates solutions to some of the problems we have on the African continent.
For these young Africans, their journey toward a STEM-related career has begun. Intelsat and X in a Box want that success to continue.
STEM careers unlock potential in economic growth, in gender equality, as well as the overall progress on the continent.
Intelsat is dedicated to providing services that make a meaningful difference to communities and businesses across Africa.
We have a responsibility in playing our part in creating that awareness and building capability in this field.
Hello everyone, the presentation we have prepared for you is an after-action review, a 5-step overview as to what our goal was for this project and what we can do to achieve it. The 5 steps include what was meant to happen, what happened, what worked, what didn't work, and then our recommendations for future International Space Station missions. Firstly, what was meant to happen? Our goal was to collect data on the atmospheric conditions inside the box containing our payload on the International Space Station. We have been measuring environmental conditions since Mission 1, as they are vital for the growth and survival of organisms in space. It can be applied in space travel, as it will create habitats and produce food for astronauts. The payload used was shared with other students in the Quest for Excellence program, and plants were placed inside the payload. We discovered how the plants could affect the environmental conditions within the payload, such as 1, how the carbon dioxide equivalent inside the container could change depending on the rate at which carbon dioxide was converted into oxygen, or if the plant was in the process of respiration. 2, which volatile organic compounds are released and the amount of particulate matter, which can change depending on the type of plant, such as how some plants produce pollen while others produce spores. And lastly, how the relative humidity and temperature of the payload could also be affected if the plants undergo transpiration. This would be dependent on the humidity inside the station and the amount of sunlight the plant receives. The payload was expected to launch on the 3rd of June, 2021 on SpaceX's CRS-22, with the data collection scheduled to take place over the course of an estimated 2 months. Wi-Fi was not available, so it was to be stored on an SD card on one of the X chips inside the payload. The data would then be sent to Quest for Excellence and then uploaded to the X in a Box dashboard. The chips that were used were the SG35 Advanced Particle Sensor, the SG33 Digital Gas Sensor, SW01 Weather Sensor, SI01 Inertial Measurement Unit, the CS11 Core with SD card interface, the MD12 Blank X chip, and the SCO2 real-time clock.
So the second part of the progress report is what actually happened. After the payload was launched, we had 2 workshops where we discussed parallel data collection. Each of us in Mission 2 was sent kits that contain most of the X chips that we would have had that were on the ISS payload. We were then going to collect data on the conditions of our own environments, mostly the air and atmosphere around us from May to July. What most of us had noticed in our data was that our local environments are actually full of particulate matter, which is something that none of us had actually thought about beforehand. For students living in urban areas, there is more construction surrounding them, and this would lead to spikes in CO2 equivalent and particulate matter, as well as volatile organic compounds due to the paint and all of the dust that is formed during construction, as well as when grass is burned for new developments. For people who are in the Northern Hemisphere, they were experiencing spring during the month of May. Therefore, they had spikes in particulate matter due to the processes of plants during the season. On the slide is an example of spikes in CO2 equivalents, volatile organic compounds, and particulate matter due to construction. The picture on screen is of my dashboard. My kit was set by a window directly across from my neighbor's house, who was actually building an extension to their home during the time that I was collecting data. This data was recorded on the 29th of June of 2021. We can see that before 5 a.m., the amount of particulate matter, CO2 equivalent, and volatile organic compounds, and for the sake of simplicity, we will call them air pollutants, in the air produced from construction the day before were actually decreasing. However, when the workers arrived after 5 a.m., the air pollutants increased until there was a huge decrease in air pollutants from 10:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. They could have been having lunch or they were doing other work during this time. Between 2:30 and 6:30 p.m., there was a spike in air pollutants. Lastly, because they returned to work. Lastly, all of the remaining pollutants, air pollutants from the day ended up traveling towards my kit in the night, which is what led to the huge spike in air pollutants from 6:30 until 7:30 p.m. The payload that our kit was launched on time on the 3rd of June of 2021 with the CRS-22. The payload stayed on the ISS for 7 weeks in total, and the kit was successfully retrieved upon arrival of the rocket from Quest, and then was sent to Quest for Excellence. However, the data on the SD card was actually corrupted. This was not due to the surrounding hardware, as it was tested at max IQ by replacing the SD card and seeing if it would have collected data. And the data on the SD cards of other student groups were actually also corrupted.
Moving on to what worked. The payload was launched on time, which was a great start, and the full payload was recovered after it was sent back. It traveled from the ISS to California and then to South Africa. The kit was tested at max IQ and worked perfectly before launch and was found to be intact and almost 100% functional once retrieved. All the hardware, except for the SD card, was still fully operational. An important part of the kit was a real-time clock, which is able to keep time without the access to the internet. A real-time clock maintains its clock, meaning that it measures time by counting oscillation cycles. This is achieved with an internal capacitor-based oscillator, an embedded quartz crystal, or a crystal oscillator circuit, and uses a small battery to operate. Initially, the real-time clock was suspected as being the cause of the data corruption, but was found in perfect working condition. New X chips were added to the 2021 kit and were not in the 2020 kit, such as the SG35 particle sensor and the stacking connectors. The SG34, the predecessor to the SG35, only took up the space of 1 X chip, whereas the SG35 takes up the space of 4. The stacking connectors were introduced so that the displaced X chips could still be part of the kit, just on a second level. With the stacking connectors, the circuit was completed without the use of wiring. The SG-35 is more accurate than the SG-34 and contains a fan for air circulation. The fan is necessary for moving the particles in the payload as they experience weightlessness on the station and need to move to be measured. What didn't work? The only part of the kit that unfortunately didn't work was the SD card. The X chip itself was intact, but the card situated on it was corrupted by the gamma or X-rays. There was no fault with the card itself, as the SD cards on all the other student projects were also corrupted, and the X chip was thoroughly tested before launch. However, radiation shielding and more ways of communicating with the chip can be implemented.
The final part to this progress report is our recommendations for future ISS missions. There are many possibilities as to why the SD card failed during the mission. One possibility that we initially focused on was a possible single upset event that could have been caused by the X-rays and gamma rays from the X-class solar flare from the AR 2838 spot on the 3rd of July of 2021, which is the strongest classification of solar flares known. Initially, we decided that we needed to add radiation shielding to our design to prevent a possible single upset event in the future. However, Bianca alerted us that we needed to look for a different approach, as we are not 100% sure if the solar flare was in fact the cause of the corruption of the memory on the SD card. We therefore looked at how we could increase the redundancy in our kits to prevent our data from being corrupted in the future. We decided that we needed to connect more CS11 chips so that we could add more SD cards, similar to how a server has multiple storage devices and multiple power supplies. This means that we will have at least two locations to store our data, and therefore we will be able to address a number of disturbances that we could face and have a higher chance of retrieving our data from our missions. This option was chosen as we needed to look at both the costs and the efficiency of the solution. First, radiation shielding would be more expensive. And second, radiation shielding would only have solved the corruption of data due to radiation and not address the hundreds of possibilities as to why data could become corrupted. We were then introduced to Bianca's new vertebral column system, which we plan on using in future launches with Blue Ship. The vertebral column system will be used to contain all of our student projects in the future, and as a solution that can be deployed on a rocket or the ISS, rather than launching new satellites every time. The new system mimics the human spine, which contains individual vertebrae, and our student projects act as individual vertebrae in the system. These individual projects are then stacked on top of each other to create an interconnected vertebral column system. Except for this body, it will have two spines, one for the core of each project to power the experiments and for data transmission, and another for the actual projects. This ability to stack experiments will allow us to put multiple projects of the same kind, whereas we were only able to put one project of the same kind before. This will allow us to not only put more than one SD card for each kit, but have multiple projects with more than one SD card. The SD cards that we use in these projects are considered to be internal storage. However, this new vertebral column system will allow us to have access to external storage as well for all of the projects that would be in the system. This will allow us to store our data in one central storage device, which can then be radiation hardened instead of adding radiation shielding to each project. Before we move on, this would be one core, and then all of these cores can be stacked on top of each other, creating a vertebral column system. And then in this image, we can see the core and a project added next to it. And then that would act as one full vertebrae. Our last solution is adding other forms of data transmission, where we would be able to frequently receive data from our kits in space. There's frequent communication between the ISS and teams working on Earth, which means we could possibly have a data downlink organized with the team working on the ISS. Data could be then downloaded once every hour or once every day. We could also possibly arrange access for radio transmission for the data using the LoRa that is found on the core of the vertebral column system to transmit data to a ground station on Earth. We would have to ask the National Association of Amateur Radio first. Before we end, even though we are not 100% sure that the solar flare was the cause, even though it is likely, we still need to, radiation shielding is very important because we are at the beginning of a new solar cycle 25, and we are around here. So that means that we are in the early stages of the solar cycle, which means for the ISS missions that are coming in the future, there's going to be a higher likelihood that we are going to be affected by solar flares and other solar particle events. So it is very important to consider radiation shielding in the future. We wanted to thank everyone that made this mission possible. We wanted to thank Quest for Excellence, who sponsored the launch, and then we wanted to thank everyone at Intelsat that has sponsored us since the beginning, since Mission 1. And then we want to thank Judy and Bianca for sponsoring us and always giving us advice. This mission was a great experience for all of us involved.
What I'd like to do is that I'd like to go to Q&A. I'd like to know if I would like to know if anybody has some questions. The Q&A is open, but I haven't seen any questions come through. So what I would really like to do is that I'd like to know if there are any questions from the audience for the students. Aisha, we have a question from you. Would you consider this a fun experience to participate in? Yeah, Liam, Sain, maybe if you want to answer Aisha's question. She's from KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa.
Okay, well, to answer your question, I'd say definitely. It's not only fun, but the experience from working with the team is just very beneficial for you as a person. Because I was always nervous speaking to people, especially when presenting. But then when I got to work with my team together on the different projects and then to present them, like we did a mission where we had to implement different aspects of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, where we got to pick a few of them and then put them into one project. And so then Sayan and I and Pula and Debbie, we made one with 3 different ones, and we got to implement all of them and then working together and then being able to present that. I thought that was a really, really fun experience.
Yeah, it is, for me, it was a very, I like space and I like research. So it was very fun for me. So I would say if you do like space, which and research and technology, which most people who do end up coming into this program do, you would really enjoy it because it gives you hands-on experience with like some engineering topics, and it gives you an actual, like, it's very different from school, because most people at school, they aren't very interested in the subject matter because they're actually forced to do the work. So it is obviously, like, there's times where you might get upset with someone or you get angry with someone, but most of the time it's not because everyone is here because they enjoy space and technology and all of that. So I would say it is fun.
Thank you so much. Oh, Judy, thank you so much. You know what, I must say I'm so impressed with Sayen and with Liam's presentation today. So just from my side, I would like to just thank the students. I've had the pleasure of observing their progress during Mission 1, and I've seen them grow as a team and work consistently in an organized manner. We've certainly been very impressed, and I do hope that each of these students do recognize their efforts and are really proud of what they've been able to achieve. And guys, you are all so talented. You would not have been selected to participate in this program if you weren't. And companies dream of hiring employees that are so excited and energetic and interested like you are. So we do appreciate all of your dedication with this program. And I hope that this knowledge and training has opened your eyes to the endless possibilities that space science has to offer and encourages you to continue a career in STEM. Satellites can and truly will transform lives in the future. And we at Intelsat, we exist to enable this transformation. And then to the Intelsat colleagues, I'm sorry not everybody was able to dial in today, but we will be having events in the future as well, and we'll, get this done properly. But thank you for participating in this event, and also thank you for your participation in the mentor program as well. I've enjoyed this presentation. I really do hope that you've enjoyed the presentation. Please share your feedback. We want to make sure that we improve. And of course, Judy, my closing remarks, I cannot close without conveying a special thanks to you. Your proactiveness, your creativity, it's been a true inspiration, and our association has been a real pleasure. So from my side, thank you so much. I'll hand back over to you.
Wonderful, Christelle, thank you. That's very flattering. Thank you very, very, very much. And really thank you so much for your support. We were able to connect with each other, during a hard lockdown, and yeah, decided to deliver something that could be done. Hans, thank you so much. Thank you so much for dialing in with your phone.
No problem.
I'm showing my age. I'm talking about dialing. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, I would like you to address our audience and our students, please. Let me hand over to you.
Listen, I'm just happy that we could manage this glitch. I'm sure there's a bunch of aspiring engineers and scientists on this calls, and problem fixing is one of the the main themes of that profession. So again, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Hans Geldenhuys. I'm the director of at Intelsat and all his operations in Africa, and I'm really pleased to have seen the work that was done and what was ultimately achieved through the STEM program. Intelsat comes a long way in the satellite industry. As a matter of fact, we were the first to launch the satellite in April of 1965. And since then, we pioneered the satellite industry. For nearly 60 years, Intelsat has really leveraged its cutting-edge space-based technology, which is all our satellites, our world-leading communication networks, which is ground infrastructure included, and an unparalleled expertise of our quality staff and engineers to really connect people, communities, businesses, and governments. And this is done in over 200 countries around the world. Today, we have 54 satellites in orbit, and we fly several more for other satellite operators. Our ultimate aim is really to maximize human potential and enabling ubiquitous communication services. Connecting the unconnected is something that we really carry so close to heart. As a matter of fact, almost half of the world's population still does not have access to broadband technology. And Intelsat is really committed to changing this and expanding access and just the technology around how to achieve that. I think the STEM program offers a great platform for us to really focus on doing that. Again, we continuously work on developing our satellite infrastructures, the technologies around that, how to really ultimately achieve connectivity globally. And also, it's not a simple scenario that you just launch a satellite and you will be able to connect people. There's different frequencies at play. There's different coverages, and even from a continent perspective, the applications do change, and this is also through broadband, mobility, media applications, and even governments, in the way that they would like to connect. So ultimately, just as this industry started as a dream, and this is done on something that was published by Arthur C. Clarke in 1945, where he did a proposal on geostationary satellite communication, and that was published in a document or magazine at that age called Wireless World. I really want to challenge everybody on this call. Sorry, I just got feedback there, but so I really want to challenge everybody on this call to dream the impossible, and your participation and a program like STEM would ultimately give you the opportunity and a good start to really do that, to learn and create something new. even the people at Intelsat and, you know, all my colleagues that we work with, you know, our people are passionate about satellite and connectivity. And we love to participate in a program like this, you know, firstly to educate, engage and encourage students, you know, to pursue a career. You know, the satellite industry or the communication industry, you know, as a whole is so interesting. And, you know, we all come from different walks of life. And I can tell, if I had more time, I would tell you my story, how I ended up in this industry. But ultimately, I never look back, and it is an amazing environment to work in. So we are proud to partner with Xenobox in Africa and to build this pipeline of the next generation of satellite engineers. And sparking this tech interest with you guys is something that's always interesting as well. And we really want to challenge you guys to really participate in this program, to really fuel ideas, to dream big, as I suggested, because everything is ultimately possible. And I want to wish you a lot of success and luck in your endeavors in this program.
Wonderful, Hans, thank you so much. Thank you very much for those inspiring words. And in the audience today, we have a number of students who've applied for Mission 1 for the program for this year. So, and we're conducting those interviews this week. So I think it's really great that they've been able to hear from you as well. And also for the students who stayed with the program and going from strength to strength. So thank you very much for your support. We really, we thoroughly enjoyed delivering this program for Intelsat, and we know that the students enjoy it very much too. So thanks once again. And let us see, I think that we, absolutely, I think that we do have some questions. We have a question here from Hafashimi Mina. Did climate change challenge you? And I think that is probably, Liam, I think that you are well placed to answer that question. So, and maybe you also want to chip in here. Did climate change challenge you at all?
Okay, well, I think that as we learn about in school, our world is changing constantly, especially with global warming and everything like that, and pollution. And so then it does encourage you to work harder on this kind of thing, because you want to find a solution. You want to make sure that you can prevent further damage from being from happening. And so then I do think that when it challenged us, I think it pushed us to work harder. And that, I mean, it made the team work well together, because like, as I was saying before, when we tried to use the sustainable development goals, we each had an idea of what we wanted to work on. So Cyan was with industry, whereas I was with like air pollution. So then we were saying, okay, how can these correlate and what can we do to fix this? So when it did challenge us, and I think that we did our best to rise to the challenge and come up with a solution.
Climate change affects everyone, everywhere. Like in the context of South Africa, we have problems with water. We go through a lot of droughts, and that obviously affects everyone, no matter social class, no matter anything. And then the second interpretation of the question is, did it challenge me to, or did it inspire me? It definitely inspired me, because when I was younger, I used to suffer from a lot of asthma problems. And then I also, I caught like a weird virus, because I used to go to crash, right? And then none of the students completed their cycle for their antibiotics. So then that's not, so like there's diseases that are coming up because of climate change. And then there are diseases that are not being able to be treated because of climate change. And they are actually becoming worse because of climate change. So all of that is it inspires me, because I've dealt with a lot of those problems. And then I personally know how it feels. So it does inspire me to work towards like taming the effects of climate change and working on it.
Great. So absolutely, thank you very much. And we have another question from Daniel Lee, who you've met from New Jersey. And Daniel is asking, he's saying, good morning, because it's morning in New Jersey. It's afternoon in South Africa, but thank you, Daniel, that's great. Good morning. I have a question. Does the environment inside the ISS ever change? If so, what kinds of predictions were you able to make about the data that you might have collected? So were you making any predictions about the data that you could have been collecting or that was there? Sayan, I see you have your hand up if you'd like to answer that.
One of the things that I did predict that could have happened was that the average temperature on the ISS does change depending on its location around the Earth and its orbits. So in parts where it's closer to the sun, it is slightly hotter, and in parts where it is further away from the sun, it's colder. So then temperature affects the rate of transpiration in a plant. So if a plant is going through transpiration, it will release water, or like if the water is evaporated, it will release water vapor. So then that will increase like the relative humidity in our payload. So that is something that I did predict could have happened. And then also if there is like changes in light, that is also another factor of the rate of transpiration. So that could have affected the amount of the relative humidity as well. So that is the thing that I did predict could have happened.
Okay, it was Declan's question is it / would it have been a challenge to have the data backed up to a server?
So we send a payload to ISS, and depending on ISS see it as a lab that does a lot of different projects, and depending on how much gear you use, you pay more for it. So we have a student project here that's more for the case of learning, that it's a vital project. So therefore, we try to kind of like cover more students rather than maybe more sophisticated solution up there. So what I mean by that is that our solution is that we send a project up there, it writes the SD card or two, or how many, as Zain and Liam have explained it. And then after a while, the project is then being sent back to Earth. And the project is stored in a Faraday cage, and a hermetically sealed Faraday cage where it runs its own project, and it takes minimum interference from the astronauts up there. So they simply offloaded from the Dragon module when it arrives there, and they slot it in and put power on, and that's it. They don't do anything else. There is other options such as connected to the internet station, to the International Space Station's internet. So they have internet up there, of course, and that connects to Earth via some technology they have up there that doesn't really matter for us. We can do that, but then and this Intelsat might be very familiar with, that's cost a little bit more per byte than we used to when we have fiber or ADSL here on the ground. So that's an option we haven't chosen. So if we had that option, we could, of course, have live data. There's also a midway where we can do a store forward, where we can collect some of the data and maybe upload them kind of like in bulk from time to time. The version we have, because this is the first time we actually have the case where we didn't get any data. So this is where we learned from. The last time we got plenty of data. So we took the data, we got the SD card back, and we when it returned, we got the files sent to us by email, and we uploaded to our server, and then the data is available there for further analysis. So there is a possibility to upload to a server directly from ISS, but that's not like what we're going for here. Also have to say, Zain's and Liam's solution here, or their team solution, to look for redundancy. It's also what needed if they actually go further and build the satellites. once they have a satellite, obviously they have to download their data live because you're not recovering the satellite. But you can't download it all the time. You have to wait to your ground station, so you have to do some store forward anyhow. So therefore, finding a solution with some redundancy, that means that they always can collect data and they can be more prepared for example, a solar flare event, a single upset event of any kind. That's a style. Adding the radio to it is what they're going to do in the next, as it was shown in a presentation. They're using a new course solution in the future. They have an onboard lower radio, so they're going to use that to download data live once that project can be used outside the ISS.
Okay.
Great, Bianca, thank you very much. I can Daniel Lee followed up with another question. Sayan says he's going to answer that live, but let me just read out the question for everybody. A follow-up question: did you try that on Earth at all, like a plant in a fridge for 12 hours and then outside for 12 hours? I wonder what the comparison between the two scenarios on Earth and on the ISS might have shown. So Sayan, you say you want to answer that live yourself.
We didn't really do any experiments to compare the data with the data we would have received on the ISS. We were more focused on looking at how that particulate matter. That was like our main focus during mission 2, because we mainly focused on air pollution in the previous mission. So, and also I do think that there's a lot of studies on how plants actually grow on the ISS and in space. So we really did want to focus on the particulate matter rather, because our focus with even like the satellite that we did design in mission 1 was on air pollution. So that was our main focus. So we didn't really look at that.
But it certainly is a very, very good suggestion for next time we run a mission 2, is to perhaps do as many as possible. Yeah. Then Sayan, I can see you also want to reply to Megan's question, which is, was there any way you could have prevented the data from being corrupted?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely ways we could have prevented the data from being corrupted, which is why we did come up with like the recommendations, which was where we looked for that redundancy in that we could add to future kits, which was I did say we initially looked at radiation shielding, but then we said it wasn't the most efficient option. So we decided that we were going to add more SD cards. So that would, like, if you add one SD card, you have a certain like chance of it not being corrupted. Then if you add 2, then that chance of it being corrupted is way less, if you look at the probability of it. So adding more extras decreases the likelihood that it will become corrupted. And then obviously we looked at Bianca's solution to it, which is the virtual column system. And then lastly, we looked at other forms of radio transmission. So then we wouldn't, if it does become corrupted, we don't have to rely on those SD cards.
Great, Sayan, absolutely, you're very right. If the chance of an SD card failing is 1 in 2,000, then if you have 2 SD cards, then you actually square that, so it's 2,000 multiplied by 2,000, which is what, 4 million. So now your chance is 1 in 4 million of both of them failing. And then certainly what you'd like to do is you'd like to negate any kind of incident that would corrupt all of the SD cards. So yes, having a completely different alternative is absolutely perfect. So what I'd like to do is that I'd actually like to round off for today. We've been going for an hour, and I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We are going to make the video available. We're just going to chop and tail it before we upload it to YouTube. And thank you very much to the students who actually did all the work on this mission. We were here merely just to lay out the platform for them to be able to conduct their experiments and to actually participate in this mission. And thank you very much. You've been going through an exam period late last year. Everybody's going back to university. Emmanuel, I can see you also here. Thank you very much for your very strong contributions, also to the rest of the team on Mission 2. And thank you very much to Hans and the team and Christelle from Intelsat. Without your sponsorship, none of this would have been possible. So with that, thank you all very much. And we look forward to seeing you at the presentation of our next mission. So from me, it's over and out. Thanks everyone. And please have a fantastic rest of your January and 2022.